Hi everyone, it's Jen again. I just wanted to make a video this week about sustainability. I know I talk about a lot of these subjects over and over again, but I just want to be your weekly reminder to take care of yourself and do not fall for the whole kind of like hustle culture mentality of your worth and of life being all about your productivity, your ability to create capital. I just, have these thoughts sometimes about my youth when I was younger in my 20s at the peak of my productive years, I guess, as far as being a good little cog in the system. And so much of my self-worth was wrapped up in my identity, and so much of my identity was wrapped up in this idea of what I could produce and being an artist and making a living creating art. And it didn't matter if I had to sacrifice friendships, family, mental health, healthcare. All those things were part of the kind of just grind mindset that you have to do these things. You have to work longer and harder and sacrifice more in order to get ahead in the rat race. Because if you didn't do those things, then somebody else is gonna get ahead and they're gonna deserve it because you were lazy and you weren't focused and you weren't productive enough and you didn't want it badly enough, or you would have been able to make it. And one of the things that I think only really time taught me, like I don't know if anybody could have told me these things and I would have like believed them in that moment. And it's only in hindsight, after failing as an artist in the sense that it became too stressful and I couldn't support myself and my family comfortably, that there was still this devastation when I came to that conclusion and I started working other types of jobs to have a more stable income, to have health insurance, in order to be able to provide for my family. And there was a time where I stopped drawing for 5 years because I disconnected myself from that identity. I felt that I lacked the talent, I lacked the conviction, I lacked whatever it factor was, that I had given it my all. I had sacrificed a good decade of my life towards that craft and pursuit of it, and really drew a phenomenal amount of work. And that's part of the reason why I'm pretty fast at drawing now. Some of it's my animation training, but a lot of it is just the fact that I drew so much. And when you're in that type of a production pipeline, you don't get hung up on like individual pieces of artwork. And I still have that mentality to this day, where I don't really approach a drawing where I'm like struggling through it to try to make it like the best thing ever. I kind of just view my work as a whole as being like, my artwork is, whatever my worst drawing is, that's me. So I guess you could just take it or leave it. And I don't try to push myself or my art to be something that it's not. And gradually over time, I get a little bit better. And that's kind of how I see my whole life these days. I just really see the benefit of sticking to something in a sustainable way, doing it on a daily basis, doing it in a way that gives me joy and is a relief from stress, and eventually these things just kind of come together. It's like trusting myself and trusting the process and not falling for all the fear and negativity that used to drive me in the past. That, oh, if you don't push yourself to do this, you're going to be lazy and you're going to waste all this time and you're going to regret it later. Well, that's actually not who I am. When I'm not burnt out, I want to do things because they energize me. I love being productive. I don't really have to worry about being unproductive as long as I haven't pushed myself to an unsustainable life. As long as I haven't burnt myself out, I'll just keep going. You know, if you don't hate your work and you don't put yourself down constantly, then you will always have horrible work, and then you'll also be like blind to it, like some type of a narcissist. That's not who I am either. I enjoy the challenge of making small incremental improvements. I think that it's a smart way to work, to capitalize on your strengths and gradually introduce challenges for yourself, but not make it all about pushing yourself beyond what you're capable of. Because when it comes to creative work, if you've already put in a bunch of work to become good at something, why not let that shine? What's the point of becoming competent and honing your skills if you don't take advantage of that? So that's one of the reasons why my approach to game dev is with visual novels and very story-heavy, art-heavy games, because I'm tapping into all my experience as a comic artist and an animator, both as like a storyteller, writer, and artist, that I spent decades honing that craft. And I don't want it to go to waste. And it's still fun for me to incorporate those kind of elements. From a productivity, like if you're just getting into game design and you don't have that background, you know, at one point I would have said, yeah, visual novels are a great entryway because they're so easy on the coding end. But now in hindsight, I'm like, well, there's a reason why, you know, a lot of indie developer spaces, they talk about making these like simple games with like these core loops and designing games around kind of self-creating content or game loops that don't require unique assets for every little bit of incremental game progression. So like visual novels, because they're basically writing and story, every single increment of progress is creating new content for it. Maybe you might reuse some music assets and you might reuse some art assets, but the bulk of the work is all creating new content. And I think that's one of the reasons why RPGs are also kind of frowned upon as being a beginner development project, because those are also like heavily reliant on creating new, unique content for every bit of game progression. And that ends up being a lot of work for solo developers. But because it is part of my background and something that I can more or less just bulldoze through, I will probably always stick to that, because I don't really get to these points where I'm like, I don't know what to write about. I don't know what to draw, because I have such a long backlog of aspirational projects and stories that I don't know if I'll ever live long enough to get through all of it. Speaking of which, I'm just going to go over again, because I'm at the beginning of the month and I am working towards my self-imposed deadlines. These are what I write. I write this list. I have the same list probably written down in like maybe 5 different places, because whenever I'm feeling kind of like unfocused, I will start writing out what my timeline looks like in that moment. And I feel like helping to visualize mentally what you're gonna do helps me to manifest that. So like when I was first learning how to draw, a lot of times I would struggle, and just drawing like one drawing would take me forever because it wouldn't turn out the way that I wanted it to. And in my mind at the time, I thought it was a skill issue with like my drawing ability, because I would think to myself, well, I know in my head that I want it to be a certain way, and when I see it on the paper, it is not that way, so it must be like some kind of skill issue. But for most people, I don't think it's a skill issue in the sense of like your ability to make a mark on a piece of paper. Certainly there is some practice in like especially long curved lines and certain shapes that take practice and time to have a nice quality of line. But most of the time it is more a visualization problem where your brain thinks you know what something looks like and you think you have a good idea of what it is you want, but when it comes to actually filling out the details and actually like manifesting that idea, you only really had an idea of an idea. You didn't have a clear idea. And so I think a lot of creative work and a lot of like where people get stuck in the creative process is because you didn't have a really clear idea. You had an idea of an idea where your brain kind of tricked you into thinking you knew what you were thinking that you had a clear idea. But when it came to actually filling out the details, you didn't really know what you were doing, and you didn't even really have a clear idea of what you were doing. You just kind of thought you did, because the brain is very good at like, filling in gaps of information and like making you think you know more than you do. So that's one of the reasons why I think drawing is such a difficult skill to learn, is because you don't know how much your brain actually assumes and does not actually see and doesn't actually know until you try to draw all those details bit by bit. Okay, well, I kind of went all over the place there. Those are my thoughts for this week. I have been working on the aftermath, and I'm headed in a really good direction and feeling pretty good. So I hope that we both have a good upcoming week, and take care. As always, don't forget to enjoy the process. Bye now.